The alert didn't arrive with drama. No alarms, no flashing icons, no frantic tone that suggested anything urgent. It was a thin gray line in my activity log, time-stamped between a garage door test and a thermostat sync. Guest access ping. Unrecognized pattern. That was it. The kind of note you usually skim past while waiting for coffee to cool. I stared at it longer than necessary, not because it looked dangerous, but because it didn't. Subtle problems are the ones that grow teeth when you stop paying attention. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I was 3 states away, holed up in a hotel room that smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and old carpet. Work trip. 2 days of consulting for a regional builder who wanted his model homes smarter without scaring buyers. I'd already finished the hard part. Diagrams, permissions, fallback routines. The rest was hand-holding and reassuring nods. I'd planned to fly home the next morning. Dana had joked on the phone that the house would miss me more than she would. I laughed, because that's what you do when a joke lands half right and half wrong. I pulled up the live dashboard. Everything looked normal. Doors secure, motion sensors quiet, cameras in standby. The house was behaving the way a house should when no one is poking at it. I tapped the alert line to expand the metadata. Same network, same internal routing. A guest profile had requested a temporary access check, then backed off. The system flagged it because the pattern didn't match previous guest behavior. I built it to notice small deviations it had noticed. I told myself it was nothing. A phone reconnecting after an update. Dana's parents visiting and pressing the wrong button. That happens, people tap things, systems learn. I closed the panel and went to pour water. Halfway to the sink, I turned around and reopened the log. Curiosity is a habit, and habits are hard to switch off just because you're married. I scrolled backward. There it was again, an hour earlier, and again the night before. Always brief, always cautious. Someone was checking the edge of the fence, not trying to jump it. I leaned back in the desk chair and listened to the hum of the air unit. The room felt smaller when I stopped pretending. My job is to design homes that answer only to the people who own them, not in a paranoid way, in a clear way. Ownership is a set of rules that don't care about feelings. People do, systems don't. That's the comfort of them. When you build something that doesn't argue, you learn quickly who expects arguments to wear you down. I pulled up the camera archive. Not the front door or the driveway, the kitchen. The house camera most people forget because it's angled toward the coffee machine and the island. A compromise Dana insisted on so it wouldn't feel invasive. We'd agreed it would only record when no primary profile was home. That was the rule. I'd written it myself. The footage loaded without ceremony. Dana stood at the island, hair tied back, phone face down beside a stack of mail. Her parents sat across from her, close together like they were sharing a bench. Owen leaned against the counter near the fridge, rocking on his heels. I watched without sound at first. Body language tells the truth before mouths catch up. Dana spoke with her hands. She always does when she thinks she's being reasonable. Her father nodded at intervals that didn't quite match her sentences. Her mother smiled tightly, the way people do when they're planning something they think will be easier if everyone agrees not to call it a plan. I scrubbed back 10 seconds and turned the audio on. "It's temporary," Dana said. "He's not going to make a big deal out of it." Her mother glanced toward the hallway, as if checking whether the walls had opinions. "We just need a few weeks." Owen shrugged. "I'll be out during the day." There was a pause then, one of those quiet spaces where someone could have asked a question. Dana didn't. She set her phone face up and slid it a few inches, checking the time. "He'll just accept it," she said, and the words landed like they'd been practiced in front of a mirror. I didn't rewind that part. I didn't need to. I watched the rest of the clip once, then saved it with a tag and timestamps. The system asked me if I wanted to notify the primary user. I declined. The house didn't need to gossip. It needed instructions. I closed the archive and stared at my reflection in the black screen. 42. Lines at the eyes that showed up when I smiled, not when I frowned. People think anger ages you. It's confusion that does the real damage. Anger, at least, has edges. Dana and I met 12 years ago at a fundraiser she was organizing. She worked the room with a clipboard and a laugh that put donors at ease. I was there because the board wanted someone to explain why their new smart wing needed to be smart in ways no one would notice. We talked about homes like they were people. She liked that. I liked that she listened. Somewhere between then and now, listening had turned into deciding. Her parents had been part of our life from the beginning. Not intrusive, not distant, present, helpful. They depended on Dana more than they admitted. It was a quiet arrangement that never quite made it onto paper. Owen drifted in and out of our orbit like a moon that never found a stable path. Always between things, always almost starting something new. I'd paid for a resume service once. I'd fixed his car twice. None of it stuck. I didn't mind helping. I minded assumptions. I replayed the clip again, slower. There were tells I'd missed the first time. Dana's choice of words. The way her father didn't ask where Owen would sleep. The way Owen avoided looking at the camera, even though most people forget it's there. This wasn't a spontaneous idea. It had been workshopped. My absence was the window. I could have called her right then. I could have asked questions and let the answers slide around the truth until they felt like something else. I'd done that before. We all have. It's a skill you pick up when you want to keep the peace more than you want to keep the facts intact. Instead, I opened the permissions panel. Guest access rules are simple on the surface. Time-bound codes, area restrictions, escalation paths. Underneath, there are a lattice of conditions that decide what happens when someone assumes they belong. I reviewed the current settings. Dana had full administrative rights. Her parents had recurring guest access for weekends. Owen had nothing on file. That mattered. I adjusted nothing yet. First, I documented, saved logs, exported access history, not because I planned to use it against anyone, because I planned to use it. There's a difference. One is reactive, the other is deliberate. I scheduled a routine maintenance audit through the HOA portal. Not an emergency, not a complaint, just a standard compliance check that required homeowner presence. I picked a date that overlapped with my return, then sent the confirmation to my own inbox. The system replied with a polite note about access and liability. I smiled. Written rules have a way of speaking clearly when people don't. Next, I called my insurer. I didn't accuse, I asked questions, hypotheticals. What happens if an unauthorized resident damages property? How does liability work with informal arrangements? The agent answered with the calm confidence of someone who had seen this play out before. I took notes. When I hung up, the room felt less small. Dana texted me while I was still at the desk. A photo of the dog asleep on the couch, paws twitching. "House is quiet," she wrote. I typed back, "Good." It was true. Quiet doesn't mean empty. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was upset. Because my brain was busy doing what it does best when given a problem with moving parts. I thought about doors and codes and expectations, about how often people confuse kindness with permission, about how jokes can be rehearsals. In the morning, I flew home. The plane ride was uneventful, which felt like a courtesy. At the house, everything was where it should be. Dana hugged me in the doorway, quick and warm. Her parents' car wasn't in the driveway. Owen's wasn't either. The house smelled like coffee and the cleaner Dana likes, the one that promises spring regardless of the season. "How was the trip?" she asked. "Productive," I said. "You?" she shrugged. "Busy, family stuff." I nodded and set my bag down. We moved through the kitchen like we always did, two people who knew each other's paths well enough not to collide. If she noticed the way my eyes flicked toward the camera, she didn't say anything. If she noticed the subtle change in the lock tone when I tested it later, she didn't comment. Systems can be discreet. That evening she mentioned Owen in passing. "He's been stressed," she said, stirring a pot. "Job stuff." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I was. Stress is real. So are houses. She smiled at me, the one that used to mean she was about to ask for something. "We'll figure it out," she said. I didn't disagree, I just didn't agree the way she expected. Later, when she went to bed, I sat in the living room with the lights low and pulled up the dashboard one more time. I set a few flags, adjusted a few thresholds, nothing that would trigger an argument, just enough to ensure the house would continue to answer the same question the same way, no matter who asked it. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, the systems hummed, patient and exact. I saved my changes and closed the panel. Tomorrow, someone would try a code that wouldn't work. Not because I was angry, because assumptions had a habit of knocking, and it was time the door replied. The first thing I learned after that night was how quiet planning can be when no one knows it's happening. I went back to work the next morning as if nothing had shifted. Emails, calls, diagrams. A client complained that his doorbell camera triggered too often when squirrels crossed the porch. I explained motion zones patiently, like a man who hadn't watched his own life tilt on an axis the evening before. There's comfort in routine. It lets you hide in plain sight. Dana noticed my calm and seemed to take it as proof that her instincts were right. She laughed more easily. She touched my arm when she walked past. She talked about small things with unnecessary detail, as if filling the air would keep larger subjects from surfacing. That's a common strategy, noise as insulation. Her parents came over on Wednesday evening. I knew before they rang the bell because the system told me, politely, that their car had entered the driveway. I watched Dana straighten the throw pillows like a stage manager resetting props. Her mother carried a casserole. Her father brought a bottle of wine I don't drink. Owen wasn't with them, not yet. We sat around the table and talked about nothing important. The weather, a neighbor's renovation, a story about someone Dana's mother knew who had moved across town and hated it. I listened, nodded, asked the right questions. When people think you're agreeable, they get sloppy. At some point, Dana's father cleared his throat. "So," he said, dragging the word like a curtain, "we've been thinking about ways everyone can support each other better." Dana shot him a look that said, "Not yet." He ignored it. I smiled. "Support is good," I said. "What do you have in mind?" Dana jumped in. "It's nothing big," she said quickly. "Just family logistics." Logistics. The word people use when they want to make choices sound mechanical instead of personal. "Owen's lease is up," her mother added. It seemed silly for him to rush into something else. "Silly," I repeated. "Rushing is rarely wise." They waited for me to say more. I didn't. Silence is a tool if you know how to hold it. Dana leaned forward. "Oh, he just need a place for a bit," she said. "Until he gets settled." "How long is a bit?" I asked. She hesitated. "We haven't put a number on it." "Numbers help," I said. "They make expectations clear." Her father waved a hand. "He's family." "So are you," I said. "And you don't live here." The air shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough to register. Dana laughed, light and dismissive. "You're being technical." "I work in systems," I said. "Technical is my comfort zone." Her mother frowned. "We thought you'd be more understanding." "I understand the request," I said. "I'm asking about the plan." There was a pause where Dana could have stepped in and clarified. She didn't. Instead, she said, "You worry too much about boundaries." That word again. Boundaries. People only notice them when they want to cross them. "I worry about clarity," I said. "Boundaries are just clarity with consequences." Owen still wasn't there, but his absence had weight. I could feel him in the room, like a chair no one sat in yet. I thought of the footage, of his eyes avoiding the camera. He knew how this worked. Let others soften the ground. We finished dinner without resolving anything. Dana's parents left with smiles that felt rehearsed. Dana kissed me on the cheek and said, "See? Easy." I didn't correct her. That night, after she fell asleep, I reviewed the access logs again. Nothing new, no attempts. Whoever planned to move Owen in knew better than to poke the system too early. That told me something else. They expected cooperation, not resistance. You don't sneak when you think the door will open. I made a list, not of grievances, of facts. Owen had no legal right to the house. Any extended stay would change liability. The HOA had occupancy limits written in plain language. My insurer cared deeply about informal residents. Dana knew all of this. She had signed the same documents I had, which meant the omission wasn't ignorance. It was convenience. On Thursday, Dana brought it up again, softer this time. "You're not saying no," she said, leaning against the counter. "You're just not saying yes." "I'm saying we need specifics," I replied. She sighed. "You always do this." "Define this," I said. She rolled her eyes. "You turn everything into a process." "Processes keep people honest," I said. She smiled then, the one that usually meant she was done negotiating. "We'll figure it out." That phrase again, we figure it out. Passive verbs are excellent hiding places. I sent an email to the HOA confirming the audit date. I forwarded the response to Dana. She didn't comment. That was interesting. If she'd thought the audit would complicate things, she might have asked me to reschedule. She didn't. Either she hadn't connected the dots, or she believed the rules would bend. Friday afternoon, Owen texted Dana while we were both in the living room. I saw the screen light up from the corner of my eye. She read it, then set the phone face down. "That's a tell. You don't hide good news." "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "He's just packing." "Packing?" I repeated. She shrugged. "You know Owen." "I do," I said. "That's why I'm asking." She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and started gathering mugs, creating motion to replace conversation. I let her. People reveal more when you don't chase them. Later that evening, after she went to shower, I checked the calendar. The audit was scheduled for Monday morning. Owen's packing implied a weekend arrival. The overlap was neat, not suspiciously neat, just efficient. I didn't move the date. I added a reminder. Saturday morning, Dana's parents called to say they were stopping by with some boxes to store temporarily. Boxes are commitments in cardboard. I said that wouldn't work. Dana covered the receiver and whispered, "Why are you being difficult?" "I'm being consistent," I whispered back. She rolled her eyes and told them we were busy. After the call, she stared at me like she was seeing a stranger who had rearranged the furniture without asking. "You're making this awkward," she said. "I'm making it clear," I replied. She shook her head. "You don't trust my family." "I trust documents," I said. "They remember what people forget." That night, I slept lightly. Not because I was anxious, but because I was waiting. There's a difference. Waiting sharpens your senses. Anxiety dulls them. Sunday morning, the driveway camera pinged. Not Dana's parents. Owen. His car was older than the last time I'd seen it, a new dent on the passenger side. He got out and stood there for a moment, looking at the house like it owed him something. He lifted a box from the back seat and walked to the door. The lock chimed politely and stayed closed. He tried again. Same result. He frowned and checked his phone. Dana's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She was in the shower. I watched Owen set the box down and pace. He tried the garage keypad. Denied. He knocked. I didn't answer. When Dana came out, wrapped in a towel, I gestured toward the screen. "Someone's here." She looked and froze. "Why can't he get in?" "Because he doesn't have access," I said. She stared at me. "You did this." "I maintain the rules," I said. She grabbed her phone and started typing. Owen knocked harder. The sound echoed through the house, insistent. I walked to the door and opened it a crack. "Hey," Owen said, forcing a smile. "Guess the code changed?" "It didn't," I said. "You never had one?" Dana appeared behind me, hair dripping, eyes bright with a mix of embarrassment and anger. "Let him in," she said. "After the audit," I said. "What audit?" Owen asked. Dana looked at me. "You didn't tell him?" "I told you," I said. She glared. "You're doing this on purpose." "Yes," I said. There was no point pretending otherwise now. Owen laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Come on, man, it's just for a bit." "That's not a duration," I said. Dana stepped forward. "You're overreacting." I looked at her, really looked, at the way certainty had replaced partnership. "You decided without me," I said. "Now you're surprised I noticed." Her parents' car pulled into the driveway then, right on cue. They got out with boxes and expressions already set for disappointment. The timing would have been impressive if it weren't so obvious. The doorbell rang. I opened the door wider this time. "There's an audit scheduled," I said calmly. "No unauthorized residents." Her mother's face tightened. "This is family." "This is my house," I said. The HOA car turned onto the street, white and unremarkable. Dana's eyes flicked to it, then back to me. For the first time, uncertainty crept in. "You planned this," she said. "I prepared," I corrected. The HOA representative parked and stepped out, clipboard in hand. The moment hung there, stretched thin by assumption meeting reality. Dana opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. There was nothing left to say that would change the rules. Owen picked up his box, set it back down, and laughed again, this time without humor. "Guess I'll come back later." "Don't," I said. He looked at me, really looked, and something shifted. Not fear, recognition. He nodded once and walked back to his car. As the HOA representative approached, Dana turned to me. "You didn't have to do it like this." "Yes," I said quietly. "I did." The door closed behind us with a soft, final click, and for the first time since I'd seen the footage, the house felt aligned again. The audit didn't feel dramatic while it was happening. That's the strange part people never understand. When rules are enforced the right way, they arrive dressed as routine, clipboards, polite questions, neutral tones, no raised voices, no slammed doors, just structure moving forward the way it was designed to. The HOA representative introduced himself with a first name I immediately forgot, the kind of forgettable that comes from competence. He shook my hand, nodded to Dana, glanced at the boxes still sitting in the driveway like props that had missed their cue. "Routine compliance review," he said. "Won't take long." Dana stood beside me, arms crossed, jaw tight. Her parents hovered a few steps back, their confidence already thinning. They had expected persuasion to work. Persuasion hates paper. We walked through the house together. He checked smoke detectors, glanced at breaker labels, confirmed occupancy limits. He asked who resided in the home. I answered clearly. Dana stayed quiet. Silence can be agreement when it's witnessed. When he reached the guest room, he paused. "Is this room currently occupied?" "No," I said. He nodded and checked a box. Any plans to change that? Not without notice, I replied. Dana made a small sound behind me. Not a word, just frustration escaping through her teeth. Outside, Owen sat in his car with the engine off, staring at his phone. He looked like someone waiting for a bus that had already passed. I didn't look at him long. I didn't need to. Some lessons teach themselves. The representative finished up and handed me a copy of the report. Everything looks fine, he said. Just remember to notify us if occupancy changes. I will, I said. He left with the same calm efficiency he'd arrived with. The street returned to its usual quiet. The boxes remained where they were, suddenly awkward. Dana's mother broke first. This is unnecessary, she said. You could have just talked to us. I did, I said. You chose not to listen. Her father frowned. You're making this into a legal thing. I'm making it into a clear thing, I said. Those often look the same. Dana turned on me then. You embarrassed them. I enforced the agreement we all signed, I said. Embarrassment is a reaction, not an action. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You always have an answer. I prepare, I said. It saves time. Owen finally got out of his car and walked back toward us, hands shoved into his jacket pockets. So what? He said. I'm just not welcome? You're welcome to visit, I said. Not to move in? He scoffed. You act like I'm some liability. You would be, I said calmly. That's not personal. Dana's mother gasped softly, like I'd insulted him. He's family. So is Dana, I said. And she didn't tell me. Dana flinched. The truth tends to do that when it's said out loud. Her father stepped closer. You think you're smarter than everyone. I think rules matter, I said. That's all. Owen shook his head and laughed again, louder this time, as if volume might change physics. Fine, whatever. I'll figure something else out. That's usually how it works, I said. He walked back to his car, started the engine, and pulled away without another word. Dana watched him go, then turned back to me, eyes bright. You didn't have to humiliate him, she said. I didn't, I replied. I declined a request. She stared at me like she wanted to argue and didn't know where to start. Her parents gathered the boxes with stiff movements, loading them back into their trunk. This isn't over, her mother said quietly. I agree, I said. That's why I documented everything. They left soon after, their goodbye brief and brittle. The house felt larger once they were gone, like it could breathe again. Dana stood in the living room, arms still crossed, looking at the floor as if answers might be hiding there. You planned all of this, she said finally. I anticipated it, I corrected. She shook her head. You enjoy this. I considered the question. I enjoy clarity, I said. Enjoyment isn't the point. She laughed again, softer this time, more tired. You're impossible. Only when I'm ignored, I said. She didn't respond. Instead, she went to the bedroom and closed the door with more force than necessary. I sat on the couch and listened to the house settle, the small clicks and hums of systems doing their jobs. There's comfort in consistency. That night, Dana didn't come out for dinner. I ate alone, scrolling through emails from clients who needed reassurance that their homes wouldn't lock them out by mistake. I replied with the same line I always used. Systems only do what you tell them to. Later, she emerged, suitcase in hand. I'm staying with my parents for a few days, she said. That's your choice, I said. She hesitated, as if waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. She left without another word. The door closed, and the lock confirmed engagement with a gentle tone. The house didn't know the difference between departures. The next few days were quiet in a way that felt intentional. Dana texted practical questions about bills and appointments. I answered them. She didn't apologize. I didn't ask for one. We were past that stage. Friends started calling, not all of them, the ones who had already heard a version of the story. I listened more than I spoke, corrected facts when necessary, let pauses do their work. People are uncomfortable with gaps. They fill them with truth when they don't have rehearsed lines. One friend asked if I was worried about pushing things too far. I told him I was worried about not pushing far enough. He didn't know what to say to that. On Thursday, I received an email from Dana's nonprofit. A polite inquiry about a donation pledge I'd made years ago, now up for renewal. I smiled at the screen. Consequences ripple in interesting ways when assumptions meet structure. I didn't cancel the pledge, I redirected it. Same amount, different program. Transparency is a language institutions understand. That evening, Dana came by to pick up more clothes. We moved around each other carefully, like strangers sharing a hallway. At one point, she stopped and looked at me. "You've changed," she said. "I adapted," I replied. "There's a difference," she shook her head. "You're acting like the villain." I thought about that after she left, about roles and narratives and how easily they shift depending on who tells the story. Villains are usually just people who stop cooperating. I went to bed that night knowing the situation wasn't resolved. It had merely progressed to the next phase. Plans have inertia. When they fail once, people try again, differently. I reviewed the logs before sleeping. No attempts, no pings, just the steady, patient record of a house doing exactly what it was designed to do. Somewhere across town, Dana was telling her parents her version of events. Owen was likely telling his. I didn't need to hear them. I already knew the shape they'd take. I'd seen it on camera, practiced and confident. I turned off the light and lay there, listening to the soft, mechanical reassurance of locks engaged and systems aligned. The house wasn't angry. Neither was I. Anger makes mistakes. I was simply done accepting plans that didn't include me. Tomorrow someone would try again. They always do. And when they did, the answer would be the same, delivered without drama, without shouting, without any need for escalation beyond the rules themselves. That's the thing about preparation. It doesn't announce itself. It waits. Once Dana moved out, the story didn't pause. It changed venues. The house stayed quiet, but my phone didn't. Messages came in from people who hadn't spoken to me in months, framed as concern but shaped like verdicts. "Are you okay?" really meant, "What did you do?" I answered the ones worth answering with facts and left the rest unread. Silence is still a response. It just doesn't invite debate. Dana didn't come back the next day, or the one after that. She texted about practical things, where she'd left a document, whether the dog's medication was refilled, which streaming service was billed to which card. I replied without commentary. Logistics again. She liked that word. I was starting to appreciate it too, for different reasons. On the third day, her parents called. I let it go to voicemail. They left a message that sounded rehearsed, something about family harmony and overreaction and how this had gotten out of hand. I saved it to a folder I'd created called Context, not Evidence. Context. There's a difference. What surprised me wasn't the volume of reaction. It was the speed with which people chose sides without asking for details. I'd always assumed adults understood that every story has two versions. Turns out most people prefer the one that lets them feel generous without effort. Dana's version traveled fast. According to her, I'd ambushed her family. I'd used my technical skills to embarrass them. I'd turned a simple request into a power play. It was almost flattering, the way she framed my competence as malice. Almost. I didn't counter it publicly. That would have turned this into a spectacle, and I don't enjoy crowds. Instead, I did something quieter. I organized. I pulled together timestamps, documents, emails, not to send out in a mass message, just to have them aligned. When someone asked me directly what happened, I told them, calmly, with dates, with phrases like, according to the HOA guidelines and as outlined in the insurance policy. People hear tone before content. My tone did the work for me. One afternoon, an old friend came by unannounced. He stood on the porch like he wasn't sure whether he was welcome. I opened the door and let him in. He looked around, as if expecting the house to have changed character without Dana's presence. "She says you blindsided her," he said after we sat down. I responded to something I wasn't told about, I replied. He frowned. "That sounds like splitting hairs." "Only if you think consent is optional," I said. He studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I guess I never thought about it that way." Most people don't, until it's their turn. That night, I received an email notification that made me sit up straighter. It wasn't dramatic, just a standard alert from my bank about a document review. Dana's name was on it. That alone wasn't unusual. We had joint accounts, shared responsibilities. What caught my attention was the category, projected equity. I logged in and followed the trail carefully. Dana hadn't taken money. She hadn't broken any laws. She'd done something subtler. She'd pre-approved a line of credit based on future assumptions, shared assets, continued residence, stable joint income. It was the kind of thing couples do when they're planning renovations or consolidations, or when they assume nothing will change. I leaned back in my chair and laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was revealing. She hadn't just planned to move Owen in, she'd planned around me, around my continued presence as a resource, even if my role as a decision-maker had been quietly retired. The bank hadn't finalized anything yet. It was pending confirmation, and my confirmation. I declined it with a single click and followed up with a call. Again, no accusations, just clarity. The representative thanked me and noted the change. I asked for a confirmation email. It arrived within minutes. I forwarded it to Dana. She called immediately. "What did you do?" she demanded. I declined a projection that didn't reflect current circumstances, I said. "You're sabotaging me," she said. "I'm correcting an assumption," I replied. "You're punishing my family." "I'm protecting my obligations," I said. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're doing this because you're angry." I considered that. "I'm doing this because plans were made without me," I said. "Anger doesn't improve accuracy." She laughed, sharp and incredulous. "You really think you're the reasonable one here?" "I think I'm the informed one," I said. She hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, I heard from someone at her nonprofit. Not officially, socially. A message asking whether everything was all right at home. The tone was careful. I replied that things were in transition and that my support for their mission remained unchanged. I kept it boring. Boring is disarming. Dana's parents tried again that weekend. This time, they showed up without boxes. Just themselves and a sense of grievance they couldn't seem to put down. I opened the door and stepped outside, closing it behind me. "We need to talk," her mother said. "I'm listening," I replied. "This has gone too far," her father said. "You've made your point?" "I didn't make a point," I said. "I enforced an agreement." "You're tearing the family apart," her mother said. I met her gaze. "I didn't change the structure," I said. "I revealed it." They exchanged looks, then her father sighed. "Dana is struggling." "I'm aware," I said. "You could help," her mother pressed. "I already did," I said, "by being clear." They left soon after, frustration trailing behind them like a scent. I went back inside and locked the door, not out of fear, but out of habit. The house acknowledged the command with its usual calm. That evening, Dana sent a long message. Not angry, not apologetic, just explanatory. She talked about pressure, about responsibility, about how family had always depended on her. She wrote that she felt like I'd chosen rules over people. I read it twice, then responded with fewer words. "I chose consent over assumption," I wrote. "That's not negotiable." She didn't reply. Days passed, then a week. The narrative shifted subtly. People stopped calling to check on Dana and started asking her what she planned to do. That's how sympathy works when it runs out of energy. It turns into expectation. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled. There's a difference. Settled feels like alignment, like standing in a room where the furniture finally makes sense. Late one night, I checked the logs again. Not because I expected activity, but because routine is grounding. Everything was quiet. No access attempts, no pings. Just the steady record of a house that understood its parameters. I turned off the screen and sat there in the dim light, thinking about how easily people confuse kindness with compliance, about how often silence is mistaken for approval. Dana had thought I'd accept the plan because I hadn't argued loudly enough before. She'd mistaken restraint for surrender. I wasn't sure what the next move would be, from her family, from Owen. Plans rarely disappear after the first failure. They mutate. They look for softer ground. But whatever came next, it would meet the same response. Not shouting, not threats. Just structure, calmly applied. I went to bed knowing one thing with certainty. The story they'd told about me was starting to crack under its own weight. Facts have a way of doing that. They don't rush, they don't persuade. They simply wait until there's nothing left to argue with. And when that happens, people are forced to confront something far more uncomfortable than conflict. They have to confront reality. Dana came back on a Tuesday evening, unannounced, just after sunset. I knew she was there before the knock because the driveway camera flagged her car, same profile, same pattern, unchanged. The system doesn't care about context. It recognizes shapes and permissions. Hers still existed, for now. I didn't open the door immediately, not to make a point. I was in the kitchen, rinsing a mug, letting the water run a second longer than necessary. There's value in not reacting on cue. Eventually, she knocked again, sharper this time, the rhythm of someone who expected compliance and hadn't received it. I opened the door and stepped aside without a word. She walked in like she'd never left, dropping her bag on the chair, scanning the room as if checking for alterations. The house looked the same. That unsettled her more than if I'd changed everything. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening," I replied. She took a breath, steadying herself. "My parents are in trouble." I waited. "Owen needs a place," she continued. "Not permanently. Just until he finds something stable." "You've already tried this," I said. "This time is different," she insisted. "Things have shifted." "They've already shifted," I said. "That's why the answer hasn't." She rubbed her temples. "You're being rigid." I'm being consistent, I said. Her jaw tightened. You're enjoying this. I looked at her, really looked, the way you do when you're deciding whether a conversation is salvageable. No, I said. I've moved past enjoyment. She stared at me. What does that even mean? It means I'm done negotiating the same boundary, I said. She paced the room, hands moving as she talked. You don't get it. They're counting on me, on us. There is no us in decisions you make alone, I said. She stopped pacing and faced me. You're threatening my family. I'm enforcing reality, I replied. Her voice rose. You're acting like you own everything. I do own this, I said. That's not an attitude, it's a fact. The word hung between us, heavy. She laughed, short and incredulous. Listen to yourself. I am, I said, for the first time in a while. She moved closer, lowering her voice. If you don't bend on this, you're going to regret it. That sounds like a threat, I said calmly. It's a warning, she snapped. I nodded. Then we're clear. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked toward the guest room. The door didn't open. She frowned and tried again. What did you do? She asked. I restricted access to rooms not in use, I said. You can't do that, she said. I already did, I replied. She turned back to me, eyes wide now. You're controlling me. I'm controlling my house, I said. There's a difference. She pulled out her phone and started tapping furiously. I recognized the posture. Calling reinforcements. I let her. Her parents arrived 20 minutes later. Owen followed in his car, keeping his distance like he expected trouble. The front of my house looked like a gathering point for a confrontation no one had planned properly. I stepped outside before they could ring the bell. This is ridiculous, her mother said immediately. I agree, I replied. Her father pointed at the house. You're locking rooms now? I'm limiting access to prevent confusion, I said. Owen scoffed. You think you're clever. I think I'm thorough, I said. Dana stepped beside him. You're making this worse. I'm ending it, I said. Her mother raised her voice. We raised her better than this. I looked at Dana. You didn't include me, I said. Repeatedly. Her father stepped forward. You don't get to rewrite family rules. I didn't, I said. I followed the written ones. Owen laughed again, that same hollow sound. You really think paperwork wins this? It already has, I said. He moved closer, invading my space, trying to intimidate without touching. I didn't step back. I didn't step forward either. You're going to regret treating us like this, he said. I looked him in the eye. You don't have the leverage you think you do, he sneered. We'll see. Actually, I said, pulling my phone out. We already have. I tapped the screen and the garage door opened, then closed, then locked. Owen's car chirped as the immobilizer engaged. Not permanently, temporarily, lawfully. The look on his face shifted from confidence to confusion. What did you do to my car? He demanded. Nothing illegal, I said. Just prevented it from leaving my property until the visit concludes. You can't do that, Dana said. I can, I replied. And I did. Her parents started talking at once, voices overlapping, accusations flying. I raised my hand. Enough, I said. Not loud, just firm. They stopped, surprised. This ends now, I said. You will not move anyone into this house. You will not make plans that involve my assets without my consent, and you will not threaten me on my own property. Dana stared at me, her face pale. You've changed, she whispered. Yes, I said. Because you forced it. Her mother shook her head. You're heartless. I'm done being convenient, I replied. Owen kicked at the gravel, frustration radiating off him. So what, we just leave? Yes, I said. That's exactly what you do. Dana turned on her parents. You promised this would work. Her father looked at her, then at me. You've turned her against us. I didn't, I said. I stopped pretending. I tapped my phone again, and the immobilizer released. Owen's car chirped a second time. He looked at it, then back at me, realization dawning. You planned this, he said. I prepared for it, I corrected. They left in stages, arguments continuing in low voices as they walked away. Dana lingered on the porch, eyes fixed on the door like it might answer her if she waited long enough. You're really doing this, she said. Yes, I replied. She nodded slowly. Then I don't know who you are anymore. I opened the door. You never knew this version, I said, because you never needed to. She left without another word. Inside, the house felt different, not quieter, clearer. I walked through each room, not inspecting, just acknowledging. Systems intact, boundaries enforced. I sat on the couch and let the evening settle. My phone buzzed once, then went still. No more messages. No more demands. I didn't feel relief. I felt completion. Outside, the streetlights came on, one by one. Inside, the locks confirmed their status with soft, neutral tones. No judgment, no emotion, just response. For a long time, I'd mistaken peace for the absence of conflict. I understood now that peace is the presence of alignment. Everything in its place. Every rule applied evenly. I turned off the lights and went to bed knowing there was only one thing left to do, and I was ready to do it. Dana returned on a Friday night when the street had already settled into its late rhythm, the kind that comes after dinner dishes are done and televisions glow behind curtains. I knew it was her before the system flagged the driveway. There's a particular way a car slows when the driver is uncertain, when they're weighing pride against necessity. Hesitation has its own tempo. I was in the living room, lights low, the house set to evening mode. I didn't rush to the door, not to assert dominance, not to prove anything. I wanted her to sit with the decision for a moment longer. The first knock was tentative. The second carried more insistence, the sound of someone trying to remind themselves they still belonged. When I opened the door, she didn't step inside. She stood on the porch with her arms folded tight, shoulders drawn inward, eyes fixed somewhere behind me like she expected resistance to leap out of the shadows. "I just want to talk," she said. "You've wanted that a lot lately," I replied. She exhaled slowly. "This isn't a fight." "It hasn't been for a while," I said. I stepped aside. She entered without meeting my eyes, her bag slung over one shoulder like she hadn't decided whether she was staying 10 minutes or 10 hours. She paused in the entryway, taking in the space, the absence of clutter where her things used to live. A house doesn't change physically when someone leaves, but it changes its posture. It stands differently. "You really locked everything down," she said. "I finished what I started," I replied. She walked toward the kitchen, trailing her fingers along the counter as if checking whether it was still solid. "My parents think you've gone too far." "They thought that earlier," I said. "This isn't new." She turned toward me, eyes tired now rather than sharp. "They're struggling." "I know," I said. "Owen's barely holding it together." I didn't respond right away. I poured myself a glass of water, letting the silence stretch until it felt uncomfortable. "Owen has been barely holding it together for years," I said finally. "That didn't start with me." She sat at the table, leaning forward, elbows planted. "You didn't have to make it this absolute." "Yes," I said. "I did." She laughed softly, a sound without humor. "You've turned into someone I don't recognize." "That's because you never needed to see this version," I said. "You were comfortable with the other one." Her mouth tightened. "That's not fair." "Neither was deciding my role without asking," I replied. She looked away, jaw working. "You always do this. You reduce everything to logic." "I reduce it to clarity," I said. "Logic is just the tool." She shook her head. "You don't understand what it's like to carry everyone." "I understand what it's like to be assumed upon," I said. Her eyes snapped back to mine. "So this is about control." "This is about consent," I replied. "Control is what you exercised when you thought I wouldn't object." She stood abruptly and walked toward the hallway, stopping in front of the guest room. She tried the handle. It didn't move. She tried again, slower, as if patience might change the outcome. "You really don't trust me," she said quietly. "I trust patterns," I replied, "and yours is clear." She turned, anger flashing. "You can't just decide everything." "I didn't decide alone," I said. "I decided after you did." She stared at me, breathing faster. "My parents are furious. They think you've humiliated them." "I didn't invite them into a situation without authority," I said. "They did that themselves." She laughed again, sharper now. "You sound proud." "I sound finished," I said. She walked back to the living room and dropped onto the couch, pressing her palms into her eyes. For a moment, the fight drained out of her posture, leaving something raw and uncertain behind. "I gave everything to make this work," she said. "You gave everything except transparency," I replied. She looked up. "That's not true." "You planned around me?" I said. "Not with me." Her shoulders sagged. "I didn't think you'd say no." "That's the problem," I said. She sat there for a long time without speaking. The house remained still, systems humming softly, indifferent to the tension. Eventually, she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, placing it on the coffee table between us like an offering. "I talked to someone," she said. "They said you can't just cut me out." I glanced at the folder but didn't open it. Advice isn't authority, I said. You're acting like this is some kind of system error, she said. It was, I replied. Unauthorized assumptions overriding shared input. She laughed bitterly. You hear yourself, right? Yes, I said. And for once, I'm not adjusting the volume for anyone. She leaned forward. I want my life back. So do I said. Then undo this, she said, voice rising. No, I replied. Her eyes widened. You're enjoying having the upper hand. I'm done sharing it with someone who treats it casually, I said. She stood again, pacing now, agitation spilling over. You think you're untouchable. I think I'm prepared, I said. She stopped in front of me. You're choosing a house over your wife. I'm choosing agency, I replied. The house is where it's enforced, she scoffed. You always hide behind structure. I stand inside it, I said. You tried to move it without permission. Her voice dropped. So what happens now? I met her gaze. Now ambiguity ends. She stiffened. What does that mean? I reached for my phone and unlocked it. The screen illuminated the room faintly. It means I stop leaving things open to interpretation. Her breath hitched. You're doing this now? I should have done it sooner, I said. She stepped back. You can't erase me. I'm not erasing you, I replied. I'm removing access you treated as entitlement. She shook her head, disbelief replacing anger. You planned this. I prepared for the outcome you kept pushing toward, I said. Her voice wavered. You're not the man I married. I'm the man you underestimated, I replied. I navigated the menus deliberately, confirming each step, reading each summary before proceeding. Account separations, permission revocations, administrative transfers. The system asked for confirmation more than once, not out of doubt, but out of respect for finality. You're destroying us, she said. Our structure was already compromised, I replied. I'm just acknowledging it. I pressed the final confirmation. The house responded with a soft chime, neutral and complete. Dana stared at my phone, understanding arriving in stages. What did you do? I finalized ownership permissions, I said. Documented, time-stamped. She backed away slowly, like the room had tilted. You didn't warn me. I did, I said, every time you dismissed me. Silence filled the space between us, heavy but stable. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere nearby, a door closed. Ordinary life continued, uninterested in our collapse. Dana picked up her bag with trembling hands. You'll regret this, she said, the words sounding hollow even to her. No, I replied. I'll remember it. She walked to the door, hesitated, then turned back one last time. You really think this is over? I think this is complete, I said. She left without another word. I closed the door behind her and rested my hand against it for a brief moment. The lock engaged with its familiar tone, certain, final. I stood there, alone, listening to the house settle, knowing there was nothing left to explain. I stayed by the door longer than necessary after she left, not because I expected her to return, but because habits take time to unlearn. For years, every argument had ended with a pause like that, a waiting space where one of us would soften, usually me. The pause didn't soften anything this time. It simply ended. I walked back into the living room and sat down, letting the quiet stretch without trying to fill it. The house felt balanced in a way it hadn't before. Not happier, not warmer, just aligned. Every response matched the input. Every permission had a name and a limit. I picked up the folder Dana had left behind and flipped through it. Letters, opinions, carefully worded phrases that sounded authoritative without actually being so. People mistake confidence for force all the time. I set the folder aside and opened the control panel again, not to change anything, but to confirm what I already knew. Primary user verified. Secondary permissions removed. Guest profiles inactive. No warnings, no alerts. The system had accepted the configuration the way it accepts gravity. I poured another glass of water and stood at the kitchen window, watching the street. A couple walked past, laughing about something trivial. A dog pulled at its leash. Somewhere nearby, someone closed a garage door. Life continued without consulting me, and that felt right. My phone buzzed once. A message from Dana's father. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Whatever it said would be a repetition of something already covered by policy and precedent. I archived it without reading. Closure doesn't require curiosity. Later, as I moved through the house, I noticed small things I hadn't before. The faint scratch near the baseboard Dana had promised to fix. The lamp we'd bought together at a market years ago, now looking like it belonged to someone else. Objects don't carry loyalty, they carry memory. Memory fades when it isn't fed. I went into the bedroom and opened the closet. Her side was nearly empty. A few hangers remained, like placeholders someone had forgotten to remove. I took them down and stacked them neatly on the bed. Order is a comfort when emotion runs out of useful purpose. I sat there for a while, thinking about how easily my role had been rewritten without my knowledge. Provider, buffer, safety net, all the useful parts, stripped of authority. It hadn't been malicious at first, just convenient. Convenience grows roots when no one challenges it. I remembered the moment on the footage, Dana's voice casual, confident, saying I would accept it, not because she believed I agreed, but because she believed disagreement wouldn't matter. That belief had been the real fracture. Everything else followed naturally. The phone buzzed again, this time a message from a mutual friend. A long one, judging by the preview. I read it carefully. It was an appeal framed as concern, urging compromise, reminding me of history. I replied with one sentence. I'm not negotiating boundaries anymore. The typing indicator appeared, then vanished. No response came. That was fine. People don't always know what to do when the usual levers stop working. I went back to the control panel one final time, not because anything needed adjustment, but because rituals help mark transitions. I reviewed the logs from the past week. Each entry told a story without emotion, attempts, denials, confirmations. The house had done exactly what it was built to do. I closed the panel and shut the screen off. The rest of the night passed without interruption. I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that comes when there's nothing left to anticipate. In the morning, sunlight filled the rooms evenly, no shadows lurking where uncertainty used to sit. When I woke, there were no new messages, no missed calls. The silence wasn't tense. It was resolved. I made coffee and stood at the counter, listening to the familiar sounds of the machine warming, the small clicks and whirs that meant everything was functioning as intended. For a long time, I'd associated calm with compromise. I understood now that calm can also come from finality. Mid-morning, a courier delivered a small package addressed to Dana. I signed for it, then held it for a moment, considering. I could have forwarded it. I could have texted her. Instead, I placed it in the entryway with the rest of her remaining things and sent a single message. Your package is here. I'll leave it on the porch this afternoon. She replied a minute later. Thanks. No argument, no accusation, just acknowledgement. That was new. At noon, I set the items outside, closed the door, and engaged the lock. I watched through the camera as she arrived later, picked them up, and left without looking back at the house. The system logged the event without comment. I turned the camera feed off. Standing alone in the living room, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't feel victorious. Victory implies opposition continuing somewhere else. This felt more like completion, a task finished properly. For years, I'd adjusted myself to maintain balance, absorbing friction so others wouldn't have to feel it. I'd mistaken that for maturity. It took this unraveling to show me the difference between patience and erasure. I walked through the house one last time, not checking for errors, not reviewing systems, just moving. Each room responded to my presence the same way it always had, lights adjusting, temperature holding steady. Recognition without question. In the control panel, a final status message remained unchanged. All permissions aligned. I shut the system down to idle and stood there, alone, without the urge to explain or justify or soften anything. The structure held. The boundaries stood. Nothing else was required. For the first time in a long while, the house answered only to me, and that answer was enough.